The 7 deepest fears after age 80 beyond mortality. Have you ever noticed that the most profound fears after 80 aren't necessarily what most people assume? Conventional wisdom suggests death tops the list of concerns. But when you truly listen to those in their 80s and beyond, you discover something remarkably different. Death, surprisingly, isn't always their greatest dread. What they fear more deeply are the gradual, subtle changes that precede it, transformations that affect their freedom, cognitive abilities, and place in society. These fears aren't always vocalized, but they're profoundly real and shape daily life more than many realize. Today, we're going to explore the 7 most significant fears that older adults face after reaching 80, concerns that transcend standard health metrics and checklists. From the gradual erosion of independence to the haunting worry of being forgotten, each fear speaks to something far deeper than physical survival. These aren't merely anxieties, they're warning signals. They indicate that something precious in life is under threat, even before the final chapter closes. I encourage you to stay with me until the conclusion of this presentation. We won't simply identify these fears, we'll thoroughly examine what they signify, why they emerge, and most importantly, what practical steps you can take to diminish their influence on your life or the life of someone you love. Some of these fears might sound familiar. Others might surprise you, but each one contains a truth we simply don't discuss often enough. Whether you're over 60 or care deeply for someone who is, this exploration will provide insight, reassurance, and a fresh perspective on the journey ahead. Now let's begin our examination. Our loss of independence. One of the most profound and universal fears that intensifies after 80 is the loss of independence. This isn't simply about needing occasional assistance. It's about the gradual inability to dress yourself, manage your medications independently, or handle daily necessities without someone else's intervention. But the fear goes deeper than merely requiring help. It's about what that dependence symbolizes. For many older adults, this transition feels like the final fracture in the foundation of their identity. When you've dedicated decades to caring for yourself, raising children, perhaps building a career or running a household, the prospect of needing assistance with fundamental tasks like brushing your teeth or putting on shoes carries immense emotional weight. Even when these changes arrive gradually, a minor slip here, a forgotten task there, they bear a psychological burden far greater than their physical impact. The unspoken question forms: am I still myself if I can no longer function as I once did? I once knew a gentleman named Walter, aged 84, who took tremendous pride in his self-sufficiency. Even after his knees began deteriorating, he stubbornly insisted on managing everything independently. Then one morning he fell while attempting to shower and had no choice but to call his son for assistance. What disturbed him wasn't primarily the fall itself, but the vulnerability it exposed. I used to carry lumber and build entire porches with my bare hands, he confided later. Now I'm reduced to calling someone to help me off the bathroom floor. This transition from capability to dependency can feel like an assault on one's dignity and self-worth. Here's an essential truth. However, independence doesn't vanish the moment you require assistance. Rather, it evolves and transforms. It becomes less about complete self-sufficiency and more about maintaining agency, expressing preferences, making meaningful choices, and preserving autonomy, even when your physical body requires support. True independence isn't exclusively physical. It encompasses mental and emotional sovereignty as well. It means being able to acknowledge, yes, I need assistance, but I still determine how I live my life. This perspective shift represents the key to managing this fear. Preparation before crisis strikes is crucial, establishing support systems before desperation sets in, making peace with assistive devices like grab bars, walkers, or meal preparation services not as symbols of weakness but as bridges that maintain your engagement with life. Each adaptation becomes a statement. I remain present. I continue living on my terms. The diminishment of certain capabilities doesn't erase your fundamental identity. By redefining independence not as complete self-reliance, but as the freedom to shape your existence according to your values, you'll discover greater peace, control, and reduced anxiety as the years progress. 2. Cognitive decline. There's a particular kind of apprehension that settles in when you suddenly can't recall the name of someone you've known for decades, or when you enter a room only to forget your purpose for being there. After 80, These momentary lapses transform from occasional annoyances into deeper questions about identity and selfhood. Am I losing my essential self? Is this the beginning of an irreversible process? For many older adults, the fear of cognitive deterioration runs even deeper than concerns about physical ailments. A fractured hip can be surgically repaired. A heart condition can be medically managed. But losing your mental faculties, your vocabulary, memories, ability to follow conversations, feels like losing the very essence of who you are as a person. I once spoke with a woman named Carol, 82, who had always prided herself on her sharp intellect, quick wit, and extensive knowledge. But she began noticing subtle signs, forgotten appointments, repeated stories, misplaced everyday items. Her greatest fear wasn't embarrassment in social situations. It was becoming unrecognizable to her children. I don't fear being physically present but mentally absent, she confided. I dread the possibility that my children might look into my eyes and find no one truly there anymore. This fear isn't irrational or exaggerated. It's profoundly human. Our memories constitute more than mere thoughts. They form our personal narrative. When that narrative begins to fray, even slightly, it can feel as though life itself is slipping beyond our grasp. An important truth bears remembering. However, cognitive decline isn't always inevitable or irreversible. The brain possesses remarkable plasticity. It can develop new neural pathways. It can be stimulated and supported in ways that maintain its vitality and responsiveness. Regular physical activity, meaningful social connections, adequate sleep, proper hydration, and continuous learning all contribute to cognitive protection. Beyond prevention strategies, another truth deserves acknowledgement. Your inherent worth doesn't diminish alongside your cognitive sharpness. Even if your mental acuity begins to fade, your presence continues to matter deeply. Your essential spirit still touches others. Your smile still communicates. Those who truly love you won't withdraw because you occasionally forget names or dates. They'll find alternative ways to connect through your voice, your warmth, your shared history. If this particular fear has been circling in your thoughts, acknowledge it without allowing it to dominate your days. Take proactive measures to nurture your cognitive health. Maintain curiosity. Stay connected with others. And remember this fundamental truth. You are infinitely more than your memory capacity. If you're finding value in these insights, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're engaged. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss future content. Your support enables us to continue creating meaningful material to inform and inspire our community. Now let's continue our exploration. 3. Outliving your financial resources. Even individuals who've worked diligently, saved prudently, and planned meticulously for retirement often harbor a quiet, persistent anxiety after reaching 80. What if my money runs out before I do? The prospect of outliving your financial resources, watching your carefully accumulated savings diminish faster than anticipated, can trigger profound distress. This concern extends beyond merely paying bills. It encompasses maintaining dignity, preserving choices, and avoiding dependence on others for financial support. The anxiety isn't necessarily about impoverishment in the traditional sense. Often it centers on uncertainty, escalating healthcare costs, unforeseen emergencies, and increased longevity all contribute to the unsettling feeling that one's financial foundation might eventually prove inadequate. For those raised during eras when frugality and financial responsibility were essential survival skills, the notion of insufficient funds feels like a personal failure rather than an unfortunate circumstance. I knew a gentleman named George, 85, who had saved conscientiously throughout his entire working life. He owned his home outright, carried no debt, and yet experienced anxiety each time he reviewed his financial statements. The uncertainty is what troubles me, he explained. I have no way of knowing how many more years I need to budget for, and I refuse to become a financial burden on my children. George wasn't living extravagantly. He simply felt the constant pressure of stretching his resources across an unknowable time span. This persistent worry can quietly diminish quality of life. It might prevent someone from adequately heating their home during winter, declining social invitations that involve expenses, or refusing to purchase items that would enhance comfort and well-being. Their world contracts not because they're destitute, but because they fear future scarcity. What approaches might help address this concern? First, accurate information proves essential. Understanding your actual financial position, realistic expenses, and strategies for structuring resources provides a sense of control amid uncertainty. Second, constructive dialogue makes a difference. Consulting with a financial advisor knowledgeable about elder finances, discussing concerns with trusted family members, or connecting with senior support services can alleviate the isolation of carrying this burden alone. You needn't possess all the answers, you simply need to stop shouldering the worry and isolation. Finally, grant yourself permission to reasonably enjoy your resources. You've worked hard, planned carefully, and exercised prudence. Now isn't the time for anxiety-driven decisions. Instead, focus on mindful, intentional spending that enhances well-being without jeopardizing security. A fulfilling life isn't measured by how much remains in your accounts, but by how wisely you utilize available resources to maintain dignity, nurture meaningful connections, and preserve the freedom to live according to your values. 4. Being forgotten or left behind. There exists a form of loneliness that cuts more deeply than mere solitude, the fear of being forgotten. For many adults over 80, this fear transcends concerns about decreased social interaction. It's about the profound ache of invisibility. The sense that life continues its forward momentum without you, as though you've become a name in an outdated directory that nobody consults anymore. Even those surrounded by loving family members can experience this sensation. Adult children become increasingly occupied with their own responsibilities. Grandchildren mature and develop independent lives. Longtime friends pass away or relocate to care facilities. The social network that once anchored your existence grows increasingly tenuous. The resulting silence often resonates more painfully than any physical discomfort. I recall a conversation with a woman named Diane, who told me, "Solitude itself doesn't trouble me. What troubles me is the thought that my absence would go unnoticed." She wasn't being melodramatic. She had family who cared for her. But she explained that the most challenging aspect of aging wasn't her physical limitations, but rather the gradual sense of diminishing relevance. No one sought her perspective anymore. No one required her assistance. She had transitioned from being centrally important to occupying the periphery of family life. This fear proves particularly powerful because it directly impacts one's sense of purpose. Human beings fundamentally need to feel valued and necessary. When that sensation begins to erode, it can precipitate emotional withdrawal, depression, and disengagement from life. Not because of health concerns, but because of a perceived lack of meaning and connection. Here's an essential truth. However, you have not become invisible, and opportunities for meaningful reconnection remain available. Begin with small, manageable steps. Reach out to someone with a thoughtful note, a shared memory, or a sincere compliment. Offer your attentive listening. Share your personal story, because someone needs to hear it, even if they don't yet realize it. Presence naturally generates presence in return. The more you engage emotionally, socially, and spiritually, the more others will recognize and acknowledge your continued significance. If those immediately surrounding you fail to create space for your participation, create new spaces for connection. Join a discussion group. Strike up conversations with neighbors. You haven't outgrown your relevance. In fact, your accumulated wisdom has never been more necessary. The world doesn't deliberately forget its elders. It simply moves at an accelerated pace. Sometimes it requires a gentle reminder of the valuable perspective you continue to offer. If these insights resonate with you, please comment number 4 below to signal your engagement. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to ensure you don't miss our upcoming content. Your support enables us to continue producing meaningful material for our community. Now let's continue our examination of losing a spouse or close companion. After 80, one of the most profound fears many people experience isn't their own mortality, but rather the loss of their most intimate companion, a spouse or lifelong friend. This anxiety extends beyond anticipatory grief. It encompasses the disruption of life's established rhythms that have developed over decades, the familiar routines, quiet conversations, and shared memories that nobody else on earth understands in quite the same way. When someone profoundly close to you dies, you experience more than their absence. You undergo a fundamental identity shift. You transition from we to me, from our home to my place, from preparing 2 cups of coffee to the jarring realization that you now need only one. This transformation proves deeply disorienting, even when anticipated. Many individuals silently carry the dread of this eventual day, fearing the moment when their living space will feel oppressively quiet, and their calendar distressingly empty. I once knew a man named Bill, 87, whose marriage had spanned more than 6 decades. He confided, "Death itself doesn't frighten me. What terrifies me is the possibility of being the one left behind." When his wife unexpectedly passed away, he described the experience as comparable to losing a limb. Not merely painful, but fundamentally unbalancing. He struggled with basic daily activities, cooking, meals, sleeping restfully, even speaking without mentally hearing her responses. "She wasn't just my partner," he explained. "She was my living memory. She preserved parts of my history that I've long since forgotten." This kind of profound loss defies simple resolution. An anticipatory fear of it can cast long shadows over otherwise contented days. What matters most is preparation, not through dread but through mindful presence, by treasuring the time that remains available, by engaging in honest conversations, by sharing essential information, passwords, recipes, stories, while both individuals remain present. For those who have already experienced this profound loss, fear often transforms into persistent longing. How do I continue alone? The answer isn't straightforward, but it typically begins with renewed connection, discovering fresh ways to express love, to feel needed, and to continue your personal narrative with dignity and resilience. No relationship can replace what has been lost, but new chapters can still contain warmth, meaning, and even unexpected moments of joy. Grief represents love that no longer has its customary destination, but your life retains its value. Your heart continues beating, and the people surrounding you, established friends, new acquaintances, even strangers, may need your presence more than you realize. 6. Chronic physical pain or illness. As we age, we naturally anticipate certain physical discomforts, but after 80, many individuals harbor a deeper fear, not of pain itself, but of becoming permanently trapped within it, facing day after endless day with no prospect of relief. The thought of spending one's final years in constant discomfort can prove more frightening than death itself because it represents suffering without escape or resolution. Counterintuitively, it's not usually acute, sharp pains that generate the greatest fear, but rather the persistent, grinding discomforts that become unwelcome companions. Through every daily activity, chronic pain gradually undermines not just physical well-being but emotional resilience as well. It disrupts sleep patterns, diminishes appetite, and depletes energy reserves. Over time, it can darken mood, reduce patience, and erode the desire for social engagement. Perhaps most challenging of all, chronic pain often remains invisible to others. You may appear relatively well externally while internally managing an overwhelming burden. I recall a conversation with Harriet, 84, who lived with unrelenting back pain from degenerative disc disease. "The pain itself isn't the worst part," she explained. "It's waking each morning to the immediate awareness that it remains present, like an unwelcome houseguest who refuses to leave." She wasn't seeking sympathy so much as respite, just temporary relief to make her days somewhat more bearable. What makes this fear particularly difficult is the perception that nothing will effectively help, that well-meaning people will dismiss it with, "Well, that's simply part of aging," leaving you to suffer quietly and alone. Fortunately, this needn't be the case. Pain management approaches have evolved significantly. Multiple options exist: physical therapy, gentle movement practices, meditation techniques, dietary modifications, innovative medications, and non-pharmaceutical interventions that can lighten the burden. The essential first step involves advocacy, speaking up persistently until you find health care, providers who truly listen and respond with empathy and practical solutions. Equally important as treating the physical pain is addressing the isolation it frequently creates. Chronic illness often gradually restricts individuals to increasingly confined spaces and activities. The less you move physically, the less you engage socially. Eventually, pain becomes the central organizing principle of existence. This is precisely why maintaining connection, even when tremendously difficult, becomes crucial. Social engagement doesn't eliminate pain, but it provides meaningful context. It reminds you that beauty, laughter, and purpose remain accessible, that something still exists worth waking up for each morning. Your identity transcends your medical diagnosis. While pain may become a persistent presence in your life, it need not define your essential self. Vitality continues to exist within you, and people who genuinely care remain committed to helping you experience life's fullness despite physical limitations. If these reflections resonate with your experience, please comment number 6 below to indicate your engagement. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to ensure you receive our future content. Your support enables us to continue producing meaningful resources for our community. Now, let's explore our final fear. 7. Being forced into a care facility. For many individuals in their 80s and beyond, few prospects generate more anxiety than the possibility of institutional placement against their wishes. This concern doesn't necessarily reflect negative perceptions of assisted living communities or nursing facilities themselves, but rather what such a transition represents: diminished autonomy, privacy, familiar surroundings, and control over daily existence. The fear extends beyond the physical environment. It centers on the decision-making process, the possibility that others will determine when you leave your home, which room becomes yours, when meals are served. It's about being managed rather than consulted. For individuals who have directed their own lives for 8 decades or more, this perceived loss of agency can feel like a premature death of selfhood. I knew a gentleman named Harold, 86, who once confided, "Dying in my own home doesn't frighten me. What frightens me is being told I can no longer live here." His concern wasn't rooted in stubbornness, but in his deep understanding of what his personal space represented. It preserved memories of his late wife, displayed photographs of grandchildren, housed the ancient coffee pot that operated exactly as he preferred. The prospect of involuntarily abandoning these anchors of identity, not through personal choice but through external judgment, caused him significant distress. This fear frequently originates from a fundamental question: will anyone genuinely consider my preferences? Older adults worry that their expressed wishes will be overridden by medical professionals, adult children, or well-intentioned caregivers who believe they know what's best. While safety considerations and appropriate care are undeniably important, so too are respect for personhood and self-determination. This reality underscores the critical importance of articulating your preferences early, before crisis situations emerge. Document your wishes. Share them explicitly with family members. Communicate not just what you want, but why these preferences matter deeply to you. If remaining in your home represents your highest priority, explain this clearly. If you're open to certain transitions but desire involvement in their timing and implementation, articulate that position as well. For family members, genuine listening becomes essential. The objective should never involve controlling an elder's life, but rather supporting it appropriately, finding creative solutions that honor both safety requirements and personal dignity. Perhaps part-time home care services offer a viable option. Perhaps downsizing within the same familiar neighborhood would work. Perhaps increased family check-ins could delay more significant transitions. At the heart of this fear lies something universally human: the desire to live according to your own values until life's conclusion. The more we respect this fundamental need, the more peace we bring to those we love and ultimately to ourselves. Final reflections. As we conclude our exploration, take a moment to reflect on these 7 profound fears, not as sources of shame, but as universal human experiences that many carry quietly through their later years. These concerns don't typically manifest all at once. They emerge gradually over time. A minor limitation here, an uncomfortable silence there, and before you recognize it fully, you find yourself living more cautiously, not necessarily because physical fragility requires it, but because anxiety about what might lie ahead has begun reshaping your choices. Here's an essential insight. Identifying and naming a fear represents the first step toward diminishing its power over you. When you bring these concerns into the open, you reclaim agency. You begin making decisions based on clarity rather than anxiety. You actively shape your remaining years with courage instead of allowing fear to determine their contours. Which of these fears resonated most deeply with you? Was it the prospect of losing independence, being forgotten, experiencing cognitive decline while physically persisting? Whatever your particular concern, please understand this fundamental truth: you are not alone. These fears don't indicate weakness or abnormality. They signal that you remain deeply engaged with life, connected to what matters most, profoundly human in the most meaningful sense. Just as these fears are legitimate, so too is your capacity to address them thoughtfully, to prepare proactively, to articulate your needs while you remain able to do so. Whether you're currently 60 or 90, it's never too late to begin. Making peace with these realities and establishing the support systems, structures, and conversations that will render your remaining years not merely tolerable but genuinely meaningful. You've navigated this far for good reason. You've weathered countless challenges. You've adapted through decades of unprecedented change. You possess greater resilience than these fears suggest, and are more deeply loved, remembered, and valued than you may ever fully comprehend. Thank you for joining this exploration today. I'd be grateful to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment sharing one insight you've gained and how you intend to apply it in your life. Your perspectives matter immensely to our community, so please share them freely. Reading your comments provides tremendous motivation and encouragement for our continued work. If you found this content valuable and helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. Your support enables us to continue creating meaningful resources for our community. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our next conversation.